I point out this identity factor about M&Ms really deliberately because on both the promoting and inhibiting pressure side, identity is the most powerful pressure that I know of. And it's the one that we spend tons and tons and tons of money through marketing and other things trying to influence. Why is identity so important? Well, because it's a core part of how we think about ourselves and how we advertise ourselves to the world. It's that inner voice about who I am as a person. I'm the kind of person who likes peanut butter M&Ms, and how we advertise to the world. I'm telling you about my liking for peanut butter M&Ms, and you can assume certain things because of that. I often think about my mother. I grew up in rural Oregon. My mother was a nurse, and she's a tough country lady. Wonderful. I love my mom. Not prone to crying, prone to hysterics particularly. But there was one reliable way to make her cry when I was a kid, and that was to try and help her use the computer. It was very frustrating for her. And there were a lot of pressures in her environment that made that a frustrating experience for her. Now, my mom was a floor nurse for a long time and then a nurse educator, and she ended her career working in what we call nursing informatics, really the tech part of nursing. This blew me away. So I sat down with my mom to have a conversation. I was like, how did they get you to do that? And, I tried to teach you computers as a kid, and you were really resistant, or felt like resistant to me. And she talked me through it, and she said, look, there's a couple things that happen. Some of the things were on the inhibiting pressure side. My mother grew up in a time where maybe technology wasn't advertised for people who weren't highly educated, who were women, who worked blue-collar jobs or shift work jobs. That there were some inhibiting pressures that made it feel like, hey, this is frustrating or not the right thing for her. But one of the key things was really identity-related promoting pressures. I tried to teach my mom to use computers by saying how powerful computers were, the things that attracted me to them. They were customizable, configurable. I could play games on them. They gave me access to the internet and a world of fascinating, interesting things. I remember chatting with over IRC voice, right? Chatting to somebody in Australia over our little tiny dial-up connection. My parents were blown away by the idea that you could do that through the internet. So there were things like that that were powerful promoting pressures for me, but not necessarily for my mom. So how did the hospital change that for her? Well, what does my mom care about? She cares about patients. She cares about patient outcomes and making sure they have the best possible experience. So what the hospital said is, hey, don't think about this as technology. Think about this as another tool to help patients, another way to maximize patient outcome. And that was something that was really important to my mom. So they attached this behavior, kind of drafted it behind something that she already strongly identified with. And so they did that by, putting up posters and giving talks and, showing the power of this. There are a bunch of interventions that strengthened that promoting pressure. It's not the only thing they did. They certainly did things to reduce the inhibiting pressure, offered training and, showed nurses using them and did other things that said, hey, this is acceptable and removed some of those inhibiting pressures. But there was a lot of strengthening of promoting pressure that was identity related to things that my mom already cared about, already thought of as true for her in the world. And that was the thing that I missed out on. I didn't talk to my mom about in computers in the way that would talk about what she cared about, right? I talked about them in the way I would care about. Stepping away from ourselves is an important part of being a behavioral scientist. I didn't learn this at 15 years old. I learned this later. It's important to be able to step back and understand what's important to someone else, how identity might be affecting them, because they might not share your identity. They might not share every characteristic of identity. Certainly some things about my mom and I are similar. We're obviously ethnically similar, and we both grew up in rural Oregon, etc. But there's gender, there's age, there's all sorts of other things that are coming into our identity. So it's important to recognize and spend time on understanding our target audience and how they identify themselves and how that might create pressures that are different than the ones we have.